Xi tells Zelensky in their first call will not add fuel to the fire. Chinese regime systematically deletes cremation data, COVID toll suspected to be very high. Chinese regime to prosecute Taiwanese pro-independence politician for alleged secession. Taiwan military to start exercises next month, focusing on combating a blockade amid CCP threats. U.S. listed China stocks evaporated by more than $100 billion in April.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky and Chinese leader Xi Jinping had their first call on April 26th, after more than 400 days of the Russia-Ukraine war. Describing his first telephone conversation with Xi as long and meaningful, Zelensky tweeted, "I believe that this call, as well as the appointment of Ukraine's ambassador to China, will give a powerful impetus to the development of our bilateral relations." Citing reports from Chinese state media, Breitbart reported that Xi told Zelensky that only dialogue and negotiations could provide a viable way out for the Ukraine crisis. However, that sentiment is not supported by facts, as the CCP appears to not only be profiting from the war, but finding sneaky ways to aid Russia. Xi complimented China's bilateral relations with Ukraine and thanked Zelensky for stressing the importance of further developing China-Ukraine ties and cooperation with China. Xi also conveyed his appreciation to Ukraine for aiding in evacuating Chinese nationals once the crisis started. In the one-hour call, Zelensky insisted that there could be no peace at the expense of territorial compromises. The territorial integrity of his nation must be restored within the 1991 borders. He added, "No one wants peace more than the Ukrainian people. We are on our land and fighting for our future, exercising our inalienable right to self-defense. Peace must be just and sustainable, based on the principles of international law and respect for the UN Charter." During the call, Xi announced that China will dispatch special representatives to oversee negotiations with all parties regarding a political settlement of the Ukraine crisis. Li Hui, formerly China's ambassador to Russia, will lead the Chinese mission. Politico reported that Xi was using this call to reject the West's criticisms of China and concerns that Beijing was preparing to support Moscow with weapons. Xi insisted, "China is neither the creator nor a party to the Ukraine crisis." According to analysts and diplomats, the hour-long chat on April 26th helped to reduce the tensions between China and the West over Beijing's perilous position, which has chiefly favored Putin. However, they warned that this would not alter Xi's underlying goal of fortifying ties with Russia to stave off American pressure, raising doubts about Beijing's capacity to mediate a settlement that would satisfy both parties. China's regime was again accused of making moves to change the number of deaths from COVID, reinforcing observers' beliefs that the number of deaths from the pandemic over the past 3 years in China must be much higher than the number reported by the Chinese Communist Party, or CCP, by many times. The Wall Street Journal on April 12th reported that the official quarterly cremation reports of more than 30 provinces, cities, or counties in China have disappeared or were not updated on time. In addition, Nanjing has deleted all cremation records since the beginning of 2020. Commenting on this action of China's regime, Hu Ping, editor-in-chief of Beijing Spring magazine, said, "This is an unmistakable signal. It shows that the CCP will continue to conceal and falsify pandemic mortality data." Hu Ping said that not all people who died during the pandemic were COVID deaths. Some died because they didn't get medical treatment in time, and some committed suicide because of economic difficulties. However, the increase in the number of cremated bodies provides an essential basis for estimating the deaths from COVID in China. According to data released by China's National Bureau of Statistics, by the end of 2022, the number of deaths nationwide will be 10.41 million, an increase of 270,000 people compared to 2021. Hu Ping considers this data unreliable because the number of corpses cremated across China during the COVID outbreak in December 2022 far exceeds 270,000 people. Daji Yuan obtained an internal document stating that from the beginning of December 2022 to to January 2, 2023, the number of cremated remains in Nanjing City was 6 to 7 times higher than usual. An employee working for a funeral home in Shanghai told Daji Yuan on December 28, 2022, that the funeral home began to issue numbers at 8 o'clock, and people must queue for 4 or 5 hours daily to wait for their turn to take a number. The person added the funeral home burns from 400 to 500 corpses daily. Meanwhile, in the past, his crematorium only burned about 90 corpses per day. Satellite images released by the U.S.'s Maxar Technologies show that funeral homes in different locations in China are bustling with activity. The driver transporting the bodies in Nanjing said he had been driving a hearse for decades and had never seen such a scene. Cheng, a Chinese American doing business in Beijing for 10 years, said he had a relationship with an official in charge of population affairs. The official said that 10% of the CCP's members have died during the pandemic. The Chinese regime said it would prosecute a Taiwanese activist for alleged secession in China after he was arrested last year, fueling tensions across the Taiwan Strait. The Chinese state security arrested Yang Qiyuan, a pro-independence politician in Zhejiang province, last August during former U.S. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi's high-profile Taiwan visit. CNN reported that Taiwan's Mainland Affairs Council, a cabinet-level agency for cross-strait relations, said they had repeatedly asked the Chinese regime's authorities to release Mr. Yang since his arrest, but had not received a direct response. The council said, "The government reiterates that Yang is innocent and calls on the Chinese Communist Party to release Yang and allow him to return to Taiwan as soon as possible." Yang Qiyuan founded the Taiwanese National Party, a pro-independence Taiwanese political party. Chinese state-controlled media claimed that Yang had been poisoned by thoughts of Taiwan independence secessionism for a long time, and actively scheming to work towards formal statehood for the island. The Chinese Communist Party, or CCP, claims Taiwan as its own territory, despite never controlling it. The CCP has repeatedly threatened to use force to unify the island with mainland China. The CCP also imprisoned other Taiwanese for national security convictions. In 2017, it sentenced Taiwanese human rights activist Li Mingchue to 5 years in prison for subverting state power. Last month, the CCP also detained a Taiwanese book publisher Li Yanhe in Shanghai when he visited his family in China. Li Yanhe, better known by his pen name Fu Cha, was born in China and moved to Taiwan in 2009. He set up Gusa Press there, publishing books criticizing the Chinese regime. Also this month, the CCP detained 2 Taiwan-based reporters for Taiwan's EBC News as they were documenting military drills in Fujian province. Taiwan has condemned the CCP's arbitrary arrests as severely damaging to human rights.
Taiwan's defense ministry announced it would start its annual Han Kuang military drills next month. The exercises will focus on preserving the fighting capability of its armed forces and combating a blockade of the island. Reuters reported that the annual military drills would start with tabletop exercises from May 15th to 19th, and then live-fire exercises would occur. The ministry said the naval drill will integrate air, land, and sea forces to attack enemy troops and amphibious assault ships, protect sea lanes, and counter blockade efforts. The ministry's combat planning chief, General Lin Wenhuang, said, "Our drills are based on the threat of the communists invading Taiwan and its recent military exercises around Taiwan." Earlier this month, after Taiwanese President Tsing Ing-wen met U.S. House Speaker Kevin McCarthy in California, the Chinese regime aggressively deployed precision strike exercises around the island. The self-ruled island is trying to boost its defensive capabilities amid ongoing CCP threats by investing in missiles and drones. Earlier this month, the island reportedly would buy 400 U.S. land-launched Harpoon missiles to arm its navy. In the meeting with President Tsai, U.S. House Speaker Kevin McCarthy emphasized the need to accelerate arms deliveries to Taiwan in the face of growing threats from the CCP regime. Michael McCall, chairman of the U.S. House Foreign Affairs Committee, also pledged to provide training for Taiwan's military during his recent visit to the island.
The market value of Chinese concept stocks listed in the United States evaporated by more than $100 billion in April, showing that political concerns overshadow optimism about the Chinese economy. On April 25th, the American Depositary Receipts, or ADR, of internet giants such as Alibaba and JD.com fell. In addition, the Nasdaq Golden Dragon China Index fell 3.06%. It's the sixth consecutive drop, notching the benchmark's longest streak of losses in more than a year. The Golden Dragon China Index has fallen by more than 10% since the end of March. The relationship between China and the U.S. is increasingly tense. The two sides have conflicts in many fields, such as the Taiwan issue, TikTok, and semiconductors. As a result, alert investors quickly trimmed their bets on China's stocks. Some investors have already given up their positive stance on Chinese stocks. For example, due to geopolitical risks, Union Bancaire Privée cut Chinese stocks from overweight to neutral this week. On April 25th, the Ontario Teachers' Pension Plan said it was also winding down its Asia Equity Investment Team in Hong Kong. In addition, it's not just New York-listed Chinese stocks that have suffered severe declines. The Hang Seng China Enterprises Index was among the 5 worst-performing stock indexes in the past 3 months. This index reflects Chinese stocks listed in Hong Kong. The CSI 300 also just had its worst 5-day move since last October.